My very first thoughts when I heard about the tragedy of Karbala was just confusion.
I didn't know much about what was going on or why all these ladies were crying and feeling extremely sad.
And I went to the shrine of Sayyidah Zainab salam alayha and saw a lot of people in black and a lot of people crying, but I had no idea why they were crying.
How can this be? How?
You're looking at 72 versus 30,000.
I accepted that Islam is my faith and that the family of the Prophet and the Prophet himself are my family.
It's not until I understood what he was bringing and what he was teaching and the beauty, and I could see that actually what he had died for and what he had lived for, that's when I got the attachment to him.
For the next 9 days, there's nothing more important. Nothing more important.
A lot of people forget that the reason we mourn for Imam Hussein and the companions and the family that were massacred there is actually because it's a protest.
Abbas was one of the people who actually did what we would all want to do.
I came back to England and I was saying to people, you must go, you've got to go to Iraq. And they said, no, Imam Hussein is in my heart, you know. So no, it's not the same, you've got to go there.
It's become like a craving for me. So when Muharram ends, I want it to come back.
It's an opportunity for you to better yourself by remembering his personality.
Mahatma Gandhi, he said himself that it taught him how to attain victory without being oppressed.
When you look at what happened at Karbala on the day of Ashura, you realise that whatever happens to us, whatever happens to me, whatever happens to one of my family members, it is nothing in comparison.
The message is eternal. It's about oppression and it's about injustice and it's about standing up to evil.
They are elevated people. And these are people of Muhammad.
كربلاء أنت طوافي جئت من عمق المنافي.
The first time I came across the story of Ashura, I felt very sad because by joining Islam, I didn't only join it to pray 5 times a day. I didn't just join it to go to mosque once in a week. I accepted that Islam is my faith and that the family of the Prophet and the Prophet himself are my family. Like their history I inherited. By accepting them as my own, I had to love them. I had to show respect for them even though they're not here. So to know that these people went through such a struggle, went through such pain, hurt me because I had to put my mom in that situation to know how it would feel like to have my own family go through that. To imagine my mom going through that much pain or having to sacrifice so much was unbelievable. I couldn't even imagine it. How could this be true? How could these people that we should love, we should respect, went through all of this, and how come nobody stopped it? And it was a disbelief to me because I didn't want to believe that this happened. I didn't know anything about Ashura. I didn't know anything about the days of the first 10 days of Muharram. It was mainly when my friend took me to the mosque one time because I thought we were gonna listen to a lecture or we were gonna listen to somebody recite the Quran. But it was, what day was it? I think it was the day of Abbas. So I remember seeing a big hand and wondering what it was there, why people were crying. And then this woman started, I think it's called a litmiyah. So she started reciting, and instantly a feeling inside me just felt like complete sadness. And I'm not the kind of person that would cry over something like that, but instantly tears came down my face. And even though I couldn't understand what she was saying because it was in Arabic, it's like my heart felt what the words meant. And that's when she asked me, my friend, do you feel the same way I do? The whole environment was very sad, very how do you explain it? I don't know how to explain it. It's just a feeling of sadness. There's no you can only experience it yourself to actually know how it is. After that day, my friend told me, like, go home, start researching about these people because they are from the family of the Prophet and they should be important to you as a Muslim. So I came home and went on Google, Wikipedia, and I listened to a lot of lectures by Sayyid Amar Naqshbandi, and he was probably the one person that guided me through the whole story of what happened. And in the beginning, it felt like I was just listening to episodes of, you see when you see a drama. So it's like you want to know what happens, so you're always listening to it, you're always watching it. But then at the same time, you kind of like, oh, I know it's not true. I know it didn't happen. But once you take that in and say that this actually happened to people, this isn't just like something that somebody made up. This isn't a game. This is how people actually treated this group of people that we're supposed to love, that we're supposed to cherish. I learned about it by being a part of it, by accepting it as like, this is what I believe in and this is how I feel I should honor them. But then for other people, you can't, like, it's not so easy for them. Like, a way I explained to my mum was that every year you see on TV channels the story of Jesus. So how he was brought up and how he died on the cross. And personally, I used to love that story. So I used to see it all the way from the beginning, and then at the end I would obviously cry because I saw this person as very important to me, very important to my religion. So that's the only way I could explain it to my mom. But even she doesn't understand because she sees that, oh, this is just a film, I can watch it at home. Why do you guys actually take time to actually gather in a community and listen to lectures and listen to poems? But then I remind her that on the day of, well, in Christianity you've got the day of Lady Fatima, so it's a completely different kind of story. But you pray the rosary for like a month, I think, and then on the last day with candles you kind of do like a procession at night time. So that's how I explained to her, like, we've got Ashura and she's got this candle procession, but then to somebody that doesn't have that religious connection to such an important person or a tradition that they have, it's not so easy. Being a Catholic before, you'd go to like events, you'd go to mass, you'd sit down, you'd barely listen to the priest speaking, and then you'd get up, you'd have the bread, you'd sit back down, you go out, then you'd speak to whoever's outside. You don't have that connection with anything that was going on. When I came to the mosque on that day, it was completely different. Everyone was in a way in tune to what was going on. It felt like you were actually there because of the events. You weren't there to please anyone. You weren't there to talk to anyone about anything that isn't to do with like what was going on. And it's like I felt like I was finally in a place where I could how do I say, I could actually respect these people. So it all comes back to respect, because when people would go to church, they wouldn't think, oh, I'm coming here because of what happened. I'm coming here for these people. And then whenever Muharram happens, in my opinion, people go there because of the story, because of how people died and who they were and what they suffered and what they can gain from these role models. Like, personally, Abbas is my role model because I saw myself as a very selfish person in the prior years to my life, and he was so selfless to actually be so thirsty and then go to the river, not even take a drop from himself, and then to go back empty-handed. It must have been such a pain because he knew how much people were suffering in the camps and he couldn't even do anything to help them. So reminding myself of his story would be to remind myself that I should live my life not for my own needs, not for like to do things for myself, but to do things to help others, because I can help myself any other day, any other time. Like, if I have free time, I'll do something that I want. But if I can take time from each day of my life to actually do something to help somebody else, that's something that I learned with what happened to Abbas. The community is so accepting. To actually be there and be accepted as one of their own, it's a completely different feeling. I've only been a Muslim for like less than a year, but being there at that moment, it felt like I was a Muslim all my life. I was part of somewhere where, not because I was from a different country, like I wouldn't stand out, because everyone was equal. Everyone was there because of one reason. We were all crying for one reason. We were all there to remember these people. And the community itself showed a lot of respect to me, being an outsider. But they accepted me, they taught me, they tried to explain to me what was going on, even though most of it wasn't Arabic and it was quite hard trying to understand what they were saying. But listening to them supporting me through this time and knowing that I had to go home soon, or I couldn't stay for the whole event. They knew that because it was so recent, that they shouldn't pressure me to stay. When I was there, the one thing that they constantly told me was, "Is your mom okay with it? Like, you know, you need to come home because your mom was like the most important person in your life." So they accepted me as one of their own, but then they reminded me that I shouldn't neglect what I have outside, the family that I have outside. The research that I have done was from the lectures of Sayyid Amina. So he wouldn't specifically talk about just the event, he would talk about each person and then how they acted in that event. There was actually a film in Arabic that I had to read the translations that showed the whole event and how the faces were covered, and from the fact that I used to see the story of Jesus and that it was so important to me, and then to see this story that isn't, I wouldn't say it would push the Jesus story away, but it would be important to me as well, because this is part of my new faith, this is part of what I've accepted for myself. So to try to put myself in that event, or because you know when you see a film, you kind of forget what's around you and you concentrate on what's actually going on. So it's more and more emotional to you. It's like, oh, I'm actually really there. I can see these people suffering, and I had this feeling of wanting to be at that moment. And through these films, through these lectures, I learned more about them. And by learning more about them, it's like when you meet somebody for the first time, but you feel like you've known them all your life. And even though I've never met them, but by learning about them, it's like they were part of my life once upon a time. I can't physically help them, but I see as in by talking about them, by remembering them, by honoring them in these days, it's like I'm bringing them back to life. What I learnt from the story and what I learnt from this event was that I should respect my parents and my family and the ones that are around me. Because being in a position where you can't help the ones you love throughout their suffering, it reminded me of at least being there for the ones that are alive. So my mom, my dad, my brothers, people that helped me through this journey. So if I'm there to tell them, like, oh, like my mom, tell her I love her every day and help them around the house, or call up my brothers and tell them, oh, like, you should come visit me sometime, just to keep that connection with them, so that if anything happens to them, I wouldn't regret having let so much space between us and leaving them without even knowing that I was there for them. If my mom was to ask me why I go to Muharram to commemorate these people during these 10 days, I would just bring her back to the event of Lady Fatima that she goes to every year. So she has to go, I think it's every night from like 7 to 9. And then there's a Saturday where she has like a procession. So that's the example I give to her. Like, if she has so much love for this person and she goes, then I should have a right to go to this event where not only are there more people to remember, but because it's such an important story to me, and my mom would have that amount of respect to be like, oh, okay, then go. And if she were to ask me, why do you do it, or who are these people, I would just tell them, these people have become my family in such a way. By accepting Islam, I accepted the history. I inherited what happened to them. So even though I'm not connected by blood, by faith, they're part of me like I'm part of them. And going to these days would only get me closer to them, would only get me closer to a state of learning how they are, gaining from the steps that they took in life to take each day of my life like they did. Like the way they respected the people, the way they spoke about Islam, the way they acted towards one another. And my mom did see the difference throughout this whole time that I have been a Muslim. She did see, how come you're being so nice now? How come you're helping more often? How come you're telling me to actually research about my own religion, to actually go more to church? Because my mom would be the kind of person to go whenever her friends would go, or whenever there's a special day going on. She wouldn't go for herself. And because I go to these events for myself, because I want to, I encourage her to at least go to hers. She's not a Muslim, but there are Christian events that she can go to. And it's a way of, I wouldn't say teaching her, because no, it is in a way of teaching her to have more respect for the people that she should look up to. Because you're not going to be in a religion if you don't even know what days you're supposed to go to church, or that you're supposed to do these things. Why be a part of something that you don't even follow? So if my mom actually says that she is a Christian, by showing how much love and love I have for my religion, she's actually looked upon hers, and she's reading the Bible now, she's going to church more often. So in a way, it's like I've balanced the house. She sees me going to these events as something good for myself, and so she's learned from what I've done to actually go to the events of her religion. Becoming a Muslim and knowing how a woman is so important, so fragile compared to men. The events, like what led after Ashura, so when the women were taken and they had no one to protect them, they had no one to look after them. And a woman myself, I feel like there should have been somebody there, but there wasn't. And for people to actually show them such a lack of respect, because they were from the family of the Prophet, if nobody would do that to them during the time where the Prophet was alive, how come they did that after?
كربلا أنت طوافي جئت من عمق المنافي وعلى